knock me out.
Hello YouTube, Harvey Talks Prison here. We're going to do a video on prison labor in America. All these companies, there's many companies that profit off of inmates. And you ever notice that prisons have their own like phone company? That's because they're in cahoots with the prisons, you know, Securus and all those. They don't use MCI or AT&T and all that anymore. So let's get into this video and see what they have to say.
So, I got caught off guard by something recently. It has to do with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which abolished slavery. The amendment reads, in part, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, shall exist within the United States." All of that made perfect sense to me, minus this one part, except as a punishment for crime. Basically, that says you can punish a criminal with slavery.
Yeah, you know, it's just like I was talking about. It's in the 13th Amendment that, you know, they outlawed slavery in 1865, I believe. Did away with, abolished it, but they kept it for prisoners.
And we do, all over the country, all the time. It's called prison labor.
Yeah.
We're all sort of familiar with the idea. Prisoners making license plates is the classic example, but that is the tip of the iceberg. Across the country, convicts do work in carpentry, sewing, mining, packaging, firefighting, telemarketing, fish farming, and artisanal.
And some people might say, well, they're learning a trade while they're in prison. But some of these they can't take to the streets. Like, just because you as a firefighter in prison, and by the way, getting paid only like $3 an hour or something like that, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, for a dangerous job. Many states won't allow them to become emergency responders once they get out of prison.
Cheese making. That last one is why this is back in the news. Whole Foods took some flack for selling felon-made cheese, and at a pretty hefty markup. Now, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, this isn't inherently a problem.
Most prisoners want to work, and jobs for prisoners can be a very positive thing.
That's David Fauti from the ACLU's National Prison Project.
But given the vast power inequality between prisoners and their employers, there's also a real potential for exploitation and abuse.
That potential is grounded in the fact that this really is slave labor. Inmates can be forced to work as long as they're deemed fit, and can be punished if they don't, including, in some cases, with solitary confinement.
Yeah, it's like that in Missouri. Unless you're disabled or something, you have to have a job. If you refuse to work, they'll put you in the hole. You know, administrative segregation, whatever you want to call it.
And then there's the question of money. We don't have to pay prisoners a dime for their work. Some states do require that prisoners are paid, but courts have consistently ruled that any pay is, quote, by the grace of the state.
Yes, by the grace of the state. You know, they don't have to pay if they don't want to, but if they decide to, it's just because they're being nice. You know, they're doing you a favor. Really.
In other words, just to be nice.
See?
Meaning, more broadly, that prisoners are highly vulnerable.
Prisoners can't unionize. If they're injured or killed on the job, in most states they're not protected by workers' compensation. So all of this creates a situation where the usual checks on employer exploitation and abuse simply don't operate.
This all means that there's no consistency in what prisoners...
Yeah, you know, if you get hurt doing a job in prison, there's no compensation for it, in workers' compensation. They just take you to medical and fix you up, if you want to call it that.
Are paid for those cheese wheels and telemarketing calls. Pay scales range from nothing to around the federal minimum wage, but many are paid under $1 an hour. And that can...
Yeah, that's the way it is in Missouri. most jobs like the barbers and kitchen and stuff, the most they can make is like $20 a month. Now the factory, they get paid by the hour, and they get paid anywhere from 60 cents to 90 some cents an hour, and sometimes a little more if they have a place where they can work overtime. Like in Farmington, the laundry, they let them work overtime. And I ain't saying that they should be paid what we were paid out here for working, minimum wage, but they should be getting a little bit more than what they're getting. But the main point is the prisons and all these other companies are profiting off of this,
And give the state what Fauti calls a perverse incentive to keep the prison population high.
Last year, when California was ordered to release some prisoners to relieve overcrowding, the state actually argued against it on the ground that it would reduce the state's access to prisoner labor.
Yeah, see, they don't want to get rid of the ones that have that work good for them and making money for them. You just saw it right there. They did not want to. They argued against it because it was getting rid of their access to prison labor. And I seen another video where a sheriff was complaining that, this is his exact words, they're not only letting the bad ones out, they're letting the good ones out. The ones that fix our cars, that put oil in our cars, that clean up and do work around here. Why do they let,
Things get more uncomfortable when you consider that America does not have a great track record when it comes to prison labor. After the Civil War, southern states struggled with a sudden lack of slave labor, thanks to the 13th Amendment, and their solution, in part, was to use that same clause, except as a punishment for crime, as a loophole. Many states passed broadly racist vagrancy laws that allowed authorities to pick up blacks on charges like loitering, imprison them when they couldn't pay fines, and lease them out en masse to places like plantations. In other words, the South got its slaves back. This system of convict leasing wasn't totally abolished until 1941. Back here in 2015, though, what are we supposed to think about prison labor? Prisoners are treated light years better today, whether they're working or not. But there are also so many more of them. Our prison system has exploded since the 1980s, giving America far and away the biggest prisoner population in the world. And that population is racially skewed in the extreme. Around 40% of prisoners are black, even though only about 13% of the country is overall. The 13th Amendment, the abolition of slavery, that happened 150 years ago. And now, 150 years later, we have this prison system instead.
Right.
And according to David Fauti, we should think hard about why we do.
The purpose of incarceration should be to protect public safety, not to provide a captive labor force for the government.
Couldn't say it better. Provide public safety, not be provide captive labor force for the government and for other companies.
For more Seeker stories, be sure to check.
All right, that's it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this and got something from it. Just remember, prison is a business. And it's not just a prison. They have many companies working for them. Some of them are just companies that only the prison has, like the phone companies. The communication service through the prison is only through companies that are tied with the prison. And this not only affects the prisoners, it affects the incarcerated too. And I mean the loved ones of the incarcerated. Because they're having to pay, and now they're getting rid of contact visits and going to video visits slowly but surely. And this is because the companies have asked the prisons to do this because they can make more money off of it. They charge a lot, just like for 15 minutes of video talking. And it's all, they'll say it's to reduce contraband coming in. Come on, man. We know who's bringing the contraband in. It's the staff. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. And see you next time. Bye.